Hello, bookish people. It's time for the December wrap up. It was a pretty good month. I uploaded 9 videos to the channel, all long form. I gained 13 subscribers. We had a total of 73.1 watch hours and 1,917 views. The best performing video was my top 10 books of all time video. No surprise there, which had a total of 28 watch hours. The worst performing video was a rough reading week. It was a rough week, only 2.7 watch hours. If the watch hours is less time than it took for me to film and to edit the video, that is an absolute failure. I will do better. I read 5 books in December, all novels, some really good ones, and one book that I absolutely hated. I also read 5 volumes of manga, so let's just talk about it. Monsters are real. Ghosts are too. They live inside of us, and sometimes they win. The Shining by Stephen King, considered one of his best classic works. I finally read it. This is the first book that I read with my book club that me and my friend started at the end of November. And what a great book to start off December with. We all know the story. A family trapped in the Overlook Hotel. They are being haunted and tempted by ghosts from ages past, and the patriarch of the family starts to go crazy, insane, and starts to do things that are erratic, things that are dangerous. He starts to become a danger to his family. This book was a nice surprise because I've never watched the movie. I honestly, even though Stephen King's one of my favorite authors, I don't really like horror. I haven't really read any of his books that are considered horror. A lot of his thrillers and a lot of his non-horror works, but The Shining is one of the first ones, and I did not mind it. Objectively, one of the better Stephen King books I've ever read. Definitely in my top 5. This book was tragic. It had me on the edge of my seat. I felt so strongly for the characters, even though I did not care for Jack or Wendy, because I think they were horrible people. They were just parents that were just not able to move past the trauma from their upbringing, and I really felt for Danny in this book. The young boy in this family has some psychic telekinetic powers, or just psychic powers, not telekinetic. He can't move things of his mind. He has the shine. That's what it's called. He has the shine. I love this story. It dragged a little bit in the middle part. Started off lots of tension. We learned more about the background and backstory of Jack and his wife. And then as Stephen King kind of gets all bogged down in descriptions of the hotel, the plot really suffers. The climax of the book, really, really good. The falling action was incredibly cathartic. Great lifelike characters. I both loved and hated Jack and his wife. I really felt like they were flawed characters. Super flawed characters. Really felt for their son Danny. But even though they were flawed, I was rooting for them the entire journey. This is one of those Stephen King books that after reading it, I was like, dang, that was really something special. Stephen King can really write. There are some people that are saying Stephen King has become a better writer in the last 20 years, and I'm one of those. But he was by no means a bad writer in his prime years. What did I rate The Shining? 4 out of 5 stars. Not my favorite Stephen King book, but really damn good. If it wasn't a little bit of a slog throughout the middle, would have definitely been a 5-star read for me. Every book is a little mirror, and sometimes you look into it and see someone else looking back. Bookshops and Bone Dust by Travis Baldree is the sequel to Legends and Lattes, a book that took BookTube by storm 2 or 3 years ago. And I must say, most people will disagree with me. The sequel, Bookshops and Bone Dust, is better than Legends and Lattes. It is not as cozy. There are higher stakes in Bookshops and Bone Dust, but I really feel it to be a way more well-rounded read. And I love the character development. I love the dialogue. I love the conflict. I love the tension. And there was some action here. There was some suspense. And there was some surprising characters that really grew on you. I loved how we are following a young Viv. If you're not familiar with the plot, the premise of Legends and Lattes, which is the first book of this series because Bookshops and Bone Dust is a prequel, it follows a retired orc adventurer who has stopped adventuring and wants to open up a coffee shop in the city. Bookshops and Bone Dust takes place at the beginning of this Orchid Adventures journey, but she has suffered an injury and she's forced to take some downtime and to rest and recuperate in this small, slow-paced, cozy little town by the sea. And she befriends a bookshop keeper, and she starts to help this bookshop get back on its feet. And she makes friends and enemies along the way. I love the characters. I love seeing Viv grow from being completely uncomfortable in this cozy setting to kind of feeling like she could possibly see herself having a future in which she is not adventuring. I related very strongly to this book because I very much am a workaholic. I have a hard time slowing down. And, as you could tell, because I'm on BookTube, I have a great love for the written word. I strongly believe that books can change your life. Books can alter the person you are. They can help you grow into so many wonderful, amazing ways. And Viv discovers a love for reading in this book. And I think the author did a very good job at depicting, like, all the troubles and insecurities and all the great meaning that goes into being a bookshop keeper. I love bookstores. I love walking into them. And if you're one of those people that just loves the feeling of discovering a new read, of going through like a bookshelves of old books and picking out hidden gems, I think you'll really like Bookshops and Bone Dust. Better than Legends and Lattes, but I understand why it is not as popular. This is another 4-star read for me. For a heartbeat, there was this feeling inside me that I'd committed this great act of violence and I could never be the same. What had I done? Nah, I'd done worse before. And given Voldrani seemed to be predicated on savagery and violence, I'd likely do worse in the future. I'd just hoped that, with the second chance, maybe I could put some of those skills to use being a savior. Finally be the good guy. One More Last Time is the first installment in The Good Guys, a very popular, successful lit RPG series that follows a man who is probably a criminal in his past life, and he's forced into this game world, this fantasy setting. And he's using this opportunity to have a second chance on life and to become a hero. This is very comedic. I picked up this book because Brian from Belltube recommended it very strongly in his video, like where he tier ranked a lot of lit RPGs that he has read, over 30 lit RPGs. So it gave me a nice sample size to choose from. This book, it's not serious. It's not going to be super intellectually stimulating, but it is good fun. I really discovered a love for lit RPGs in 2024, and I'm going to be continuing on with The Good Guys. From my understanding, there's like 2 other series from the author, Eric Uglin, that really all connect into this massive mega series of over like 30 books at this point. I'm not sure if there's an ending in sight, but I think these books are fun enough that I don't need an ending in the near future. I think I'm just going to pick off an installment from this series every month or so, and I'll be done with it in like a year or two, and I think that'll be a good use of my time. One More Last Time, it's a story we've all read before. Bad guy wants to turn over a new leaf, he goes on adventures, and our protagonist, he's overpowered. If you don't like overpowered protagonists, you may find this book and possibly this series to not be super interesting. But if you just like the idea of a strong main character figuring out ways to beat even stronger bad guys as he kind of grows and progresses in power, I really think you'll like these books. I enjoyed this book even though it lacked some depth, so 3.5 out of 5 stars for me. I swear to the dark god, Jerry, if you're about to tell me that there's a dead body in the trunk of your car, I'm going to lose it. Relax, he said. What I have to tell you is way more interesting than that. I finished Volume 3 of Tales from the Gas Station by Jack Townsend. This is the 3rd installment out of 4. I'll be finishing this very soon, perhaps in 2 to 3 weeks. Tales from the Gas Station is like a creepypasta. It's very comedic, it's very creepy, it's very eerie, and it's completely bonkers. I just now have sort of an idea what is happening. If you're a reader that needs to understand what is happening with the narratives that you are following, steer clear of this series. This series is not for the faint of heart. It is very much an acquired taste. I had no idea what was happening in the first installment. The second installment was even more frustrating because, yes, some questions were answered, but many more were presented to the reader. And I actually almost quit the third installment. The first half of it was very much like overly convoluted and not very enjoyable to read, but then quickly, Volume 3 became the best installment in the series so far. I love our characters. I love Jerry. I love Jack. I love, the other supporting cast, all the other supporting characters in the story. I don't want to give names because so many characters die in this series, and I don't want to give away any spoilers. So many character deaths, so many plot twists, so many twists and turns, so many bad guys that it's hard to keep it all straight. And what is happening at this gas station? The premise of this entire series is that we follow a terminally ill gas station clerk named Jack, who works at this gas station in this small town where weird things are always happening, and the gas station seems to be this nexus for every weird, strange thing to happen. There's, in the first 10 pages of the first book, mutated raccoons, a cult in the woods, the ghost of a cowboy in the bathroom, a stain on the floor that can never be wiped away. And that's just in the first 10 pages. Absolutely bonkers. I gave this 3.5 out of 5 stars, but I have great hopes for the fourth installment in the series. Definitely a hard book to recommend to people. Perhaps the length of one's life was not important, except in the way it is to so many living beings, desperate to avoid death. Perhaps, long or short, it mattered how one spent that time. Me and my book club also finished The Raven Tower by Ann Leckie in the last days of December. I had such high hopes for this book. I originally was going to read The Sword of Kaigen by M.L. Wong as a last read for 2024. But as I was going through Reddit, looking for book recommendations, seeing how good The Sword of Kaigen was, one book kept coming up in comparison, and people were saying, like, The Sword of Kaigen is amazing, but the best standalone fantasy book I've ever read is The Raven Tower. And I saw this several times across several subreddits, across several threads, and I saw this book getting mentioned, and it was much shorter than Sword of Kaigen, so easier to sell to the book club. So we read it, and all four of us absolutely hated it. I don't know what people were thinking saying that this book was amazing. It was 2 out of 5 stars for me. I definitely think a large part of why this book is rated so highly on Amazon and Goodreads is because the main character and protagonist comes from an underrepresented minority group. Because if you can't see yourself in the protagonist, it's very easy to resonate with the characters, to be immersed in the read, and to feel like you belong. And that's completely valid. So I'm not saying that's the reason I didn't like the book. I don't care if my characters are diverse or they are not. That's just my personal taste. But The Raven Tower, the characters were so wooden. The plot was in no way, like compelling, original, surprising, thrilling. There is a character that is naked for 75% of the book, and that is the most interesting part of one of the main plot points. This dude's just naked. Our main character makes stupid decisions. None of the characters act rationally. The saving grace of this book is that the book is told in a very interesting format. It's like following this one character, the main character, during one timeline. And in thousands of years in the past, it's following the origins of this god, and this god is the narrator of the story. Oh, and this book is told very much in the second person. So that's very unique. Very good writing. There's good writing, very interesting writing style, and the point of view of this god, the origins of this god, and how this god grows to become this powerful god, and how it learned to love humans, and learning about the origins of deities in this setting was very compelling, very engaging, very intriguing, very intellectually stimulating. But I will say this book has no falling action whatsoever. Climax happens, the book ends 2 paragraphs later. There is insta-love, there is stupid character dynamics, there is wooden dialogue, and it really was perhaps the worst book to end my year on. It was perhaps the most disappointing read I had of 2024. So nothing happens for like 80% of this book. And then the climax happens and there's no fallen actions. Nothing happens for the majority of this book. And then the climax happens, and then the next page, the book is over. No falling action whatsoever. We're just given this great reveal, and then the story's over. And it was a really unsatisfying, uncathartic ending, and it frustrated me. I don't understand the super stellar positive reviews about this. Like, it was either 5 stars or 1 stars. You either hated this book or you loved it, and I hated it. So I rated it 1.5 out of 5 stars because I did really feel like the saving grace was the chapters that were from the point of view of the god. That was really cool, very interesting. But yeah, I pride myself on having a very good screening process for picking out books that I'm going to read. I very rarely read a stinker, but The Raven Tower was a stinker, in my opinion. Just my opinion. It is subjective, not objective. If you're interested in this book, definitely read it, give it a try. I read 5 volumes of a manga called Change the World by Yuya Kanzaki. This is a very interesting, like, thriller body swap manga. Our main character is a burnout. He's a homeless young man who has no great accomplishments to his name. He is not attractive, he has no friends, he lives in internet cafes, and he's actually, the story starts off of him preparing to take his own life. He bumps into a dead body, he goes to inspect it, and then a man walks into the house where he's planning to end his own life, and he pulls a gun on him because he looks like he's killed a guy, and then our main character pulls out his gun, and then they shoot each other, and some magic weirdness happens, and they switch bodies. Our main character wakes up in the body of a very attractive, very successful detective, and he's like, oh, I won the lottery. I was a loser with no friends that was very ugly, and now I'm a very good-looking, successful detective. And then he goes to this detective's mansion in the mountains, and he's like, I have a map. I'm rich too. This is so awesome. I'm so lucky. He walks into the basement and finds a bunch of bodies because he realized that he has switched bodies with a serial killer. From that point on, the plot gets more and more complicated, twists and turns throughout the entire series. Only 5 volumes, but it covered a lot of ground. I loved the supporting cast of characters. I loved the ending. I found the climax to be very enjoyable. It was a very cathartic 5-volume manga series, and I recommend it very highly. I love body swap stories. I remember watching Freaky Friday when I was younger and loving it. I love the central themes of body swaps. Mainly, you're not going to value what you have until you lose it. And when you walk a mile in somebody else's shoes or somebody else's body, so to speak, then you realize that what you had before wasn't that bad. You learn a lot about self-love from body swap stories, and you got that from Change the World. And there's also a thrilling mystery at the center of the plot. What's not to like? I gave this series 4 out of 5 stars. I loved this manga. So there you have it. 5 books, most of which I really liked, one of which I hated, and 1 manga series that I loved immensely. December was not a bad way to end 2024. But 2025 is going to be much better. I can't wait to see what the stories have in store for me in January, and I'll talk to you guys about it next time.